Okay, welcome to my wife's movie club. This week they were watching The Ghost and Mr. Chicken. So, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, if you have ever seen this movie, it's pretty fun. In the opening scene of The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, it stars Don Knotts. We see Luther, who's played by Don Knotts, driving. When he sees and hears that a man has died, he rushes from a car to take a picture of this dead man for the newspaper for which he works, and then he rushes to the police office to share the news. Luther, again Don Knotts, is excitable for sure, and as a result, he is not always taken very seriously. He is told to be calm, but responds that a murder and calm do not go together.
All right, Luther, now just calm down. Calm? Calm? Do murder and calm go together? Calm and murder?
No one believes Luther, and he attempts to defend his claim, telling everyone he has photographic evidence. At this point, the murdered man walks into the office, confirming the doubt of everyone, but gets a strange comical response from Luther, who tells the man in front of him he is dead. At this point, I'd like to ask a couple questions I'd like to explore about Luther and the situation. Why does Luther believe the man is dead? In his mind, he has ample evidence. There was a body who had fallen to the ground. There was witnesses that screamed the man is dead. The body is acting like a dead body. There was no movement or sound, etc. Luther takes pictures to document the event. He believes he has everything one would need to prove the man is dead and has been murdered. All the evidence aligns with his interpretations, but the mind is prone to take shortcuts with information and conclusions. This begins opening the rest of the movie with the question, how do you know what you know? You know? Why? The second question is, why does Luther defend his belief, even though there's obvious evidence that he is mistaken? The answer is Luther is experiencing cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological stress experienced due to conflict and contrary information, ideas, or actions, and the process used to make a contrary information or action become consistent. Luther believes that he has stated he knows the man is dead, and as he's making his claim, the dead man walks in. This is contrary information. Now, it would be easy for him to say, I thought you were dead. I'm so glad you're alive. Or just walk away saying, I know what I saw. So why doesn't he? It is because the higher the importance of the conflict information, the harder it is to resolve the dissonance. The importance raises the magnitude of the dissonance. It is important to Luther. To him, it is the truth, his experience, and potentially his ticket to being a real reporter. That's his aspirations. Luther has linked the proclaiming of the dead man to his own credibility, his integrity, and reasoning capability. This raises the importance of being correct, and therefore the magnitude of the dissonance when the dead man comes walking in. When a strongly held belief or an important belief is challenged by some information you are not aware of before, there is bound to be cognitive dissonance. Political, religious, or academic beliefs challenged by contrary information can result in a brain frenzy and frantic reasoning. When cognitive dissonance occurs, we see a variety of responses, all of which are designed to put the mind in a state of harmony with the new information or old information. Some of the responses are rejection and avoiding new information. You've probably experienced this when someone says they just don't want to listen to you, or they won't even entertain contrary ideas. Another response would be minimizing or questioning the source of information. We validate our current beliefs and actions while we dismiss the new ones. This looks like justification of current beliefs or practices because the new information is not important or not impactful or not reliable. Another response could be a modification of our belief to fit or to restore consistency to maintain a form of the old information with the new. So this is finding explanations or solutions that we did not previously know. Maintaining some of our beliefs, but also having the new beliefs with them. Another response might be changing our behavior. Hey, I was wrong. I need to do something different. So we change our behavior to be in harmony with the new information. And then there's also the response of abandonment of all we knew before. I was wrong. I must be wrong about everything. Usually things like this are followed by an accusation against someone who shared those previous beliefs. So anyone who shared those beliefs, they're ignorant just like we were. So anyway, depending on your process, all of this can be healthy. All those responses have a place and a time. This process is the process of growing and learning, but depending on how you respond, it also can be detrimental. In the movie, Luther admits that the living proof of the man standing in front of him trumps his previous conclusions, and he capitulates that he must have missed something. Before, in his initial assessment, he was wrong. In this case, the process was painful because Luther and those doubting him, it is validation that he's not capable or trustworthy because of his excitable or nervous nature. So, what is your process for learning and dealing with contrary information? Back to the question, how do you know what you know? Luther, in the story, is asked to write a short article for the newspaper about the Simmons haunted mansion. This is the first subversive portion of the film. Luther gets all his information for his short article from the janitor where he works. The janitor tells him about the haunted mansion and the ghost of a man who killed his wife and then jumped to his death from the organ room. The organ plays each night at midnight. Is this the man's ghost? From the information, Luther writes a 2-paragraph story about the haunted mansion, and it's well received. The movie is saying something here, I think. Is the media reliable? Is this a reliable story? Well, no. Is this how newspaper stories are written? Well, yes. And just because you read in the newspaper does not give you reason to just believe. The janitor is considered a legitimate source because he once worked at the house as a gardener. And Luther does no additional research, no additional checking, no additional finding. The newspaper prints it. It was filler anyway, so I pose this lack of checking and sourcing is not needed. Luther spends a night in the house as a publicity stunt. He's going to show the story that he wrote in the newspaper is true by experiencing it for himself. His experience it includes a record player playing by itself, a secret passage, shears stabbing into a picture of his wife, and blood coming out of the painting, and an organ playing by itself at midnight. We see all the same things. This really happened. Now, check out this scene after his experience in the haunted mansion.
Okay, now, Luther, tell us what happened.
It was terrible. It was just terrible. Oh, no, he's gonna cry.
Now, steady now, Luther. Tell us about it.
It was terrible. It was just terrible. I'll never get over it as long as I live.
Hey, great opening line. I'll never get over it as long as I live. Okay, Luther, go on.
Look out the house. Lightning, thunder. Zoom, zoom, down the coal chute.
I arrived at the house. Giving careful consideration to the most advantageous means of entry, I selected the coal chute.
Believe it or not, your news source gets and reports their information in the same way. Every once in a while they admit they embellished or were wrong, or that their source was not telling the truth, but mostly when they exaggerate or are wrong, they don't do anything because it's the next day and we're talking about something else. After Luther's second story is released, he becomes somewhat of a hero for his bravery. Because of his story, he gets accolades and lawsuits. The accolades come from a women's group of spiritualists. The group sees Luther's experience in the Simmons house as proof of spiritual matters. They support Luther and are thankful to him for his testimony. So why do they believe? Confirmation bias? Maybe. It is normal to interpret new evidence or testimony to which we already agree is new and good evidence, and also natural to disregard those that we do not agree with. The lawsuit comes from the nephew of the dead Mr. Simmons. He wants to tear down the house, but the transaction with the bank is delayed because the banker has a spiritualist wife who has influence over her husband's decisions. So he sues Luther and the newspaper for libel.
A little pipsqueak like you fighting us in court, just who do you think you are?
Drop dead, that's who.
This is the second time the cynical side of the movie comes out. It appears as it is saying something again about truth. Truth needs to be examined, but it is not going to be proven in a courtroom or by popular opinion or voting. Simmons is acting out of self-interest and self-preservation. Truth is not his motivation. He doesn't care if what is being said is true or made up, but he knows he can manipulate the observable facts for his own gain. Simmons will use his legal team to try to discredit Luther and demolish the house, not because he thinks he is lying or mistaken, but because he believes he can control the truth, control the narrative, and change what is believed. We learn his motive later in the film. As it is revealed, he is the murderer, and the reason he wants the house destroyed is to destroy the evidence of his crime. It is Simmons who ultimately reveals all the lies, cover-ups, and misinformation by his actions within the house. He is revealed to be a murderer just as the janitor suspected. Simmons represents power and influence. He is the people of this world who misrepresent truth, fight against it, and try to destroy evidence for their own selfish reasons. Think of conmen, forgers, politicians, and the media as prime examples of inappropriate emphasis or concealment of facts to get their own way. The lawsuit lands Luther in court defending his experience. The evidence is displayed for the judge and jury. The courtroom should be a place where we present the facts and determine what we believe is true, but as you know, it is often a manipulation of emotions and the use of distractions and confusions to get the desired outcome. One tactic used to discredit Luther and the newspaper is to use the character witnesses. Luther's former grade school teacher gives testimony against or about Luther's character and how he often made things up in the past. The movie is telling us something here. We see Luther as a grown man, even old by some standards. What he did in grade school is surely irrelevant. Yet, this is a manipulation of the jury and the audience in the courtroom. This is called ad hominem, attack on the person. Logically, a liar should not be trusted, nor one who can't tell reality from imaginary. But this is not proof that what he is saying is true or not. It does raise the question if Luther can be trusted, and it is a plea to the jury not to believe Luther. The second tactic is to impose impossible or unlikely demands or misplace the burden of proof. This is done by the judge, who is not convinced testimony will prove anything. Interesting viewpoint for a judge, I suppose. That the only way to prove Luther's testimony is to demand Luther recreate the experience for everyone else. This is misplaced burden because Luther is not responsible for the event. He's only experienced them. Luther himself doesn't know the rules. He does not know how to ensure it will happen. He only knows what he experienced. He may have said more than he knew, but still, to put the burden on Luther to provide the supernatural is clearly not a good measure of what he experienced or the proof or truth or whatever. This is the equivalent of show me a sign and I will believe religious motif. On the surface, it's a perfectly legitimate request, and Luther is so convinced of his experience that he has no hesitation to show them. But just like the religious motif, it fails to recognize the nature of what and who are at work. Usually this is a Hail Mary excuse for not believing, followed by a moving of the goalposts if the proof is delivered. If Luther, not in charge of the events he saw, fails to provide the quote-unquote proof, it does not illustrate the truth or negate his experience. This is not a scientific discovery whose goal never was truth. Luther himself doesn't know why or how, he only knows what he experienced. The judge and jury and most of the courtroom audience go to the house, and those allowed in do not witness what Luther did. But we, the film audience, did see it before, and we know he's telling the truth. But the conclusion is that what he said is proven false or not true. When the court shows that he's making it up, which again he is not, the spiritual group the spiritualist group, is the most upset. They feel betrayed. It is not just a lack of evidence for their beliefs, but because of their support, they now feel like they have been violated and betrayed. Why? Why are they the most upset of all the groups? Well, because their belief in the lie makes them look worse than before and also makes them look foolish. Simpson's quote I'm reminded of is Lisa says, "Bart Simpson, the thought of a boy trapped in a well brought out the kindness and love of the entire community. When they find out you've been fooling them, they're going to want to cut you up with rusty razors." Luther is confused at the results and sad as everyone walks away. It is at this point that the janitor tells him the truth, that it was him the whole time. He's the one who played the organ and switched out the pictures, etc. He provided the false story to begin with, if you remember. And he has been using Luther because he had a hidden agenda to expose the real murderer. His response to Luther after the failure is to show the haunted events is that there never was a ghost. It was him the whole time. So, he told a lie to get to the truth? Another round of questions, please. While the explanation makes sense to Luther, it is inconsistent with what we have seen. When Luther runs away, the organ is still playing, and there's no one playing them from below as the janitor claimed. Luther runs right past that area. He does not remember this, but we do. Then in the final scene, we are shown a different organ playing the same haunting tune without a player, showing us we don't really know what occurred after all. There might be a ghost after all. Just as the movie revealed all the truth to the movie, and we accepted that there was no ghost, it was all made up, the film gives us evidence of the ghost we had already written off. This is the wink that reminds us we don't really know anything. In conclusion, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken is a fun movie. And as I watched it, I thought it had a lot to say about assumptions, conclusions, and overall questioning of the truth. We can be aware of cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias and other manipulative strategies, but ultimately I think we do know a lot of things. But it's good to reflect on how we know and question, what do we really know? You know?
Get him, Luther! Get him! Don't let him get away! I'll kill her, Kelsey!
Made my whole body a weapon.